Hello students, welcome back to your economics class. Today we will do the revision of chapter 2, that is people as resource. Now resources, what is a resource? When we talk about people as a resource, it's very important to understand the term resource. So resource is basically any goods or services that is used in the process of production. Now this can be natural or it can be human. Natural is commodities that are valuable in their relatively natural form, and human is basically valuable human work power. Now, what is human capital formation? Human capital, basically the word human capital, it refers to the abilities, knowledge, skills that is acquired by the people, and this skill can be used as a resource in the process of production. Now, the higher stock of human capital, the more human capital we have, it implies higher level of skills and abilities. Basically, if the levels, the skills and abilities that we have, if they are higher, then we have a higher stock of human capital. And human capital formation basically refers to the increase in the stock of abilities, knowledge, and skill acquired by the people of a country during a period of time. So there are three things here. One is understand what is human capital. Then what do you mean by higher stock of human capital? Basically, it does not mean lot, it means better. It means higher level of skills and abilities. And what is human capital formation? Human capital formation is increasing the stock of abilities, knowledge, and skill. Over here, it also means quantity and quality, increasing the quantity and quality of the ability, knowledge, and skill acquired by the people of a country during a particular point of time. So, how does this human capital formation occur? Now, greater investment directed towards education, productive training, and good health of people. These are the three places where you could do investment, and that will mean that is how the human capital formation occurs. That is how we can have a good base of human capital. And investment in human capital always yields a return just like investment in physical capital. So basically, human capital formation refers to the increase in stock of abilities, knowledge, and skills acquired by the people of a country during a particular point of time. And you can do this by increasing the expenditures on schools, colleges, hospitals, nursing home, etc. Now, if we increase the human resource, what will be the impact on the growth? Now, economic development of the country always calls for full utilization of the available labor. It is usually said that in context of human resources, it's usually said that manpower is the power of the nation and manpower is nation's wealth. So basically, human resource will help us in good economic development in so many ways. Like for example, the first one is supply of productive labor. If we have trained and efficient labor, automatically the efficiency of the laborer will improve and it will give us good productive labor. Secondly, division of labor and specialization in large scale production. Now you can give them specialization because they come with that particular ability or skill. Number three, physical capital formation. As a result of the process of human capital formation, labor force will acquire special skills and they will become innovative. So, the growth of physical capital formation in terms of wider variety of machines and tools to be used in the process of production will increase. Basically, now we can even acquire good physical capital because we have so many skilled work, labor. We have such skilled human resources who can build much better machines. Finally, as a consumer, rise in human resource means rise in demand. Basically, if we are going to increase the ability of the human resource, their demand is also going to be high, And when the demand will increase, automatically investment will also increase, implying faster rate of growth. So today, if you say that, MBAs, we need lots and lots of MBAs, automatically all of us will go and do MBAs. That's how MBAs came into being, when the demand increased. Okay, so basically an increased population, like having good population, can only be a blessing to a country if it is educated and healthy. Otherwise, if it's going to become a liability on the country, it is absolutely useless. Then we learned about the economic and the non-economic activities. Activities which are directed towards earning a living are called economic activities. Activities which are not directed towards earning a living are called non-economic activities. So, for example, taking a morning walk or exercise or prayer, these are all non-economic activities. Not all activities performed by us during the day are economic. Some of them are also non-economic. So these non-economic activities, they are not directed towards earning an income. Okay, so working as a laborer, if I am, working as a gym instructor, the one who is guiding me is doing an economic activity. But me following his instruction, I'm doing a non-economic activity. All right. Then we differentiated between market and non-market activities. Market activities or market-oriented activities are the ones that involves exchange through market, and non-market activities do not involve exchange through market. So, for example, a farmer has grown some crops in his field. When he goes to sell these crops in the market, it will become a market activity. But when he's going to keep a part of the produce for himself, and that part is not going to be exchanged in any market, that is a non-market activity. Okay, so as producers, so basically the small farmers, they produce crops largely for self-consumption. So they are doing non-market activity. Now, uh, there are three producing sectors of an economy. Basically, economic activities, and depending on the nature of the economic activity, economic is divided into three sectors. Okay, they are primary, secondary, and tertiary. Now, primary are those economic activities which are related to the exploitation of natural resources. So I'm talking of agriculture, mining, fishing, any activity that is related to exploitation of natural resources. So primary sector of economy can be defined as the sector in which production is undertaken on the basis of primary economic activities. Cattle, anything related to farming, cattle, fishing, mining, which are anything related to the natural resources falls in primary sector. Primarily agriculture and all its allied activities will fall in primary sector. Then the secondary sector, over here, these are those production activities which are related to manufacturing. Okay, so secondary sector of economy can be defined as a sector in which production or manufacturing of goods is undertaken on the basis of secondary economic activities. So it includes production activities like generating electricity, construction activities, generation of various consumer goods. Okay, so all types of manufacturing activities will fall in this. Finally, tertiary sector. Now, tertiary sectors are those economic activities which are related to production of services. It produces services. It does not produce a good, but it produces a service. So the tertiary sector of economy is engaged in the production of services like shipping, insurance, banking. Basically, they provide services, they produce services that are required for the primary and secondary sectors. Okay, economy is basically the sum total of all economic activities, and it has three sectors: primary, secondary, and tertiary. All right. Then we had seen two circles of growth, which was virtuous circle and vicious circle. So in the virtuous circle of growth, the priority of expenditure is given to health and education. which in turn generates skills, abilities, and productive human energy. And this in turn, creates human capital formation, which will finally facilitate judicious use of other factors of production because now they have good ability. This will accelerate the growth of the company, of the person, of the individual. And finally, priority on health and education will continue, and the virtuous cycle of growth will keep on happening. This is, a classic example of this would be Japan. We had spoken about Japan, how they, you know, they follow the virtuous cycle of growth, and how they, they focused on human capital formation. Okay, even though they do not have they did not have any natural resource, and still it is a very it is one of the good developed countries. It's one of the rich countries of the world. They import natural resource needed in their country, and still they are in the developed state because they focused on human capital formation by prioritizing their expenditure on health and education. Now let's look at the vicious cycle of growth. In the vicious cycle of growth, priority is not given to health and education, which further means that there is lack of skills and abilities, and productive human energy is less. Finally, it means lack of human capital formation. We do not have any human capital formation. And then because of this, the use of other factors of production is done in a very irrational method, because the people using it are not skilled, they are not having the correct ability. So this finally retards the pace of growth of the country, of the person, of the individual, of the firm. And again, the priority of expenditure is not given to health and education, and this cycle continues to suffer and becomes a vicious cycle of growth. So basically, this is the difference between a developed country and a developing country, or an underdeveloped country. Japan would be a virtuous cycle of growth, and India is heading towards a virtuous cycle of growth, is something I would really love to believe. With the new education policy coming in, I can see a positive change happening, but only time will tell. Now, what is the role of education in human resource development? Now, education and health, these are the very important features of human resource development, because human resource does not only mean the size of labor force or the size of population, but it also means quality of labor, the force, the quality of population. So let's see how, if we spend on education, how does education play an important role in human resource development? So education is a very important determinant of quality of population. It not only produces good citizens, but also directly contributes to the process of growth and development. So number one, education helps in the growth of specialized skill. It also increases awareness and scientific outlook of people. It facilitates research and innovation, and it contributes towards the cultural richness and efficiency of government. Okay, but unfortunately for India, education for all is only a slogan, and it's not really it's not being applied correctly. But like I told you all, over the time, with the way I can see, people are really looking into education more deeply. Hopefully, we will see a change evident very soon. Now, what is the role of health in human resource formation? Now, health is another important indicator of quality of human resource. Good health means good consumption level of people, good quality of life, good level of energy. So people enjoying good health are naturally going to be much more efficient. So it will, it will contribute in high efficiency of the employee. Similarly, people with good health find themselves fit to work with those, with everyone. So there's a higher degree of employment, and country, will show good performance. Okay, and of course the productivity of people will also increase, the productivity of firm will increase, because there will be less people staying home because of being sick, because they're all healthy, they will come to work, productivity will increase. So ill health keeps lots of people away from gainful occupation, and so it is a hindrance in the process of growth and development. So we should focus on education and health. Now, then we had learned about unemployment. Now, unemployment is basically a situation where a person is able and also willing to work at existing wage rate, but is still not getting work. And this is a serious and complex problem that India faces. Okay, it has been increasing. It has been an increasing problem every 5-year plan. Now, what do you mean? Before we jump into unemployment, I want you all to understand the difference between unemployment and underemployment. Now, unemployment is a situation where a person is able, is willing to work at current rate and still not getting work. But underemployment is a situation where people do not get full-time jobs, so they remain unemployed for some part of the day or some months of the year, or some days in a week or something. They are not getting full-time jobs. So they remain unemployed some part. So that is called underemployment. What is it called? Underemployment. Now, what are the types of employment? There are 4 types of employment that we are going to discuss over here in this chapter. Disguised unemployment, seasonal unemployment, industrial unemployment, and educated unemployment. Now, disguised unemployment is basically when more people are engaged in the same activity than required. So let's say if I have to pick a table and move it from one place to another, and I have 20 people picking that table up, where that table can be perfectly fine picked up by 2 people. That means I have 18 people who are disguised unemployment. That means it looks like they are employed, but they're actually not employed. Okay, and the best way to test this is, if you remove some people from that work. So out of those 20 people picking up the work table, if I remove 5 people and I check the productivity is still the same, the table is still being shifted and the time is also same, I remove other 5 people, I'll remove other 5 people. That's how I will realize that I have disguised unemployment. When you remove people and the productivity does not fall. Now this generally happens on family farms, because the entire family is working on that farm. So if it's a family of 12 working on a small plot of land, they're not required to work, but then they have no other work to do, so they work on the farm and it looks like they are working, but like I said, it only looks like they are working, they are not required over there. Then comes seasonal unemployment. Seasonal unemployment is unavailability of work during some seasons. Basically, again, in farm, in rural areas, when it is not a sowing season, when it's not a harvest season, people do not have jobs. So this is seasonal unemployment. Then we have industrial unemployment. Industrial unemployment is where illiterate people, okay, who are willing to work in industries, etc., but they are not able to find work. They are illiterate, but they want to work in industries, mining, transport, etc., but they can't find work. And finally, we have educated unemployed. It is a bigger danger to the stability and the security of a country, because it really pulls the moral down of the education system. Over here, a person is educated, willing to work, but still not finding the job. Okay, so this lays more stress on the education system, uh, and this is basically because these kind of things basically happen because unemployment, a substantial expansion of educational institutions. So basically, if somebody is stressing on degrees rather than practical training, and inadequate increase in employment opportunities, they can't perform. These educated people will not be able to perform. All right. So there are, out of these 4 that we have seen, 2 belong to rural employment and 2 mean urban employment. So disguised and seasonal are more found in the rural areas. So they fall in the rural unemployment. And industrial and educated is generally found in the urban areas. So they are the urban unemployment. Now, what are the reasons of unemployment? Okay, most of this have a spelling mistake in the word unemployment. Sorry about that. Causes of unemployment. Now, number one, scarcity of land, and there is no capital for manpower, so there is unemployment. Number two, productivity is less productivity, so low profit. Low profit, so the person is going to invest less. Because he's going to invest less, he's not going to hire people, so unemployment. Finally, rapid growth of population, especially in the rural areas, leads to unemployment. Then slow growth of industries and saturation in the agricultural sector. That means agricultural sector is completely saturated. There is no scope of any employment. And over here, the industries are growing very slowly. So they're not able to generate that amount of employment. So they have unemployment. And finally, we have a faulty education system which is changing. I have hopes for the new education policy whenever it will be applied. At the moment, we have a faulty education system which is very degree based, and it is completely devoid of any vocationalization. And so educated unemployment becomes a consequence. Okay, now you have understood, we've discussed the causes. Next is the implications of unemployment. Unemployment has many serious implications or causes, or consequences on a society. Okay, so let's discuss this. We have social implications. We have social consequences. Number one, salary loss. Salary loss means survival becomes difficult. It is very serious with those who have large families. It becomes a social, you start feeling socially awkward, you feel socially excluded, you feel inferior. Next is because you are feeling inferior, you're going to have a loss of your self-esteem, because you're not going to have any professional identity in the society, and so you will have low self-esteem. And to run the family and to survive, we are going to take debts. So our debts will keep increasing, whether formal ways or informal ways, from friends or from banks. We just keep asking for money and the debts will increase. And of course we get more frustrated, especially in youth, which is resulting in all these crimes that we keep listening to, suicides, divorces. This is all a way, unemployment gives it further leads on to these things. If you look at the political implications, the government starts spending more on the welfare of the unemployed rather than spending on growth and development. So it results in decreased spending on growth and development. Okay. Number two is progressively we will have low national income, because unemployment will finally lead to instability of the government, and then the government will look like a poor performer. And if you look at some other implications, number one is the person an unemployed person will become a liability to the country instead of an asset. It will lower the standard of living of a country as a whole. It denies opportunities for better living, and workers who suffer for a very long point of time, if they are unemployed and all, they start losing their skill, because some skills need repeated practice. Correct. So another I this is the last slide. I don't have anything after this, but I have a nice thought in my head, which I think you all should pen down in your textbooks and find the points and write them down. How do you think the human capital formation can change anything in the rural areas? Okay, how do you think it will improve anything in the rural areas if we focus on human capital formation? All right. So with this, I'm ending this chapter. We finished 2 chapters of economics. We finished, I think now you all should be more prepared for your examinations. Best of luck. If you have any doubts, write them down. We'll discuss it in the Zoom session that is being scheduled for you all. So stay home, stay safe, take care, keep learning. Thank you.